Today, I'm going to show you one of my favorite tools that I have started using in the last year or two, and it has really transformed the way that I go about running the company that I do during the day. Keep in mind, this YouTube channel is just my side hustle. This is what I do on the side. This is my way of giving back to all of those that have taught me things over the years. Hey, welcome back. For those of you joining me again, my name is Joe. I'm with SolveOnyx. This is a channel where I try to share with other business leaders, managers, executives on different tools, different techniques, different things that you can build to make your processes, your business run smoother so that your customers get the best experience possible and you're able to deliver the best service as well. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about bubble.io. If you haven't seen this, you need to check it out, and I'm going to show you so much about it. Not necessarily today, because I could talk for hours and hours about the things that you can do with Bubble to build some amazing web apps. So we're not just talking about building a web page. That's boring. That's old. We've been doing that forever. We're talking about applications that your customers, your internal employees, or anywhere in between can use to get jobs done, to share information, and to do some really amazing, powerful things. And you don't have to be a developer to do it. If you're like me and know what you want to build, you just need the right tools to do it, this is for you. And let's go ahead and explore that more in today's topic, where I'm going to just provide a very high-level overview, and we'll even build a simple little app, and we'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's jump right in. So one of the things that I love about Bubble is I don't have to install any application on my PC. It doesn't matter if I'm running a PC or a Mac, or I've even done some stuff on my iPhone. I don't recommend it, but it can be done, some quick edits. Everything is done in their web portal, where you go in, you edit your app, you update it, you publish it to your domain. It's pretty cool stuff. So what I have in front of me is an app that I was working on. It's just a test. It's just a test app and a blank page. And the thing is, Bubble, like I said in the intro, this isn't about just building a web page. There's a ton of ways out there to build a web page or some sort of a landing site for your company. This is so much more. This is where you're able to actually interact with data, share data behind secure logins, basically build an entire web app. Now, you're not going to build the next Facebook or Amazon on the Bubble platform, but you can build some things that mimic that same sort of functionality. And I've done it. I've done it with building our own chat apps, like messenger apps. I've built e-commerce type stores on this platform, all different sorts of platforms where customers can log in and look at specific data to them. There's data privacy that can be implemented, so your data is secure. You can set up logins. It's really quite powerful. So the key takeaway is it's not just a website. This is a web app builder. And what that allows us to do is have not only data on the back end, but also different ways to interact with that data through inputs, building forms, dropdowns, things like that, so you can accomplish some pretty amazing things. So I want to just show you how easy it is to get started. And a lot of times I've read that people are a little intimidated at first by this platform to build web apps on. But I'm going to show you, if you have a general understanding of how programming works, I think you'll find this quite easy to pick up once you get the hang of it. It is what they call like a low code or a no code type platform, which has its pros and its cons, but you don't have to worry about getting so caught up in the syntax of everything and learning, what was that function called again? It makes it a little bit easier, and we'll talk about what that means. So for today's demo, I'm going to build a simple web app, and it's going to be something that could probably be done another way. Like, there are form builders out there that might be better suited for this sort of a thing, like JotForm, or Microsoft has their Microsoft Forms. But if you were building a portal, for instance, for your customers to log in and get access to data, and maybe there was some sort of a form that you needed to create. Maybe it's a warranty submission form, or maybe you're having like a sales convention or something, and you want your customers to sign up for it. You would put a form up there for that. So in the example that I'm going to kind of walk through today, I'm going to build a very simple form, and you can see just scratching the surface about how powerful this is. So let's go ahead and jump in. I jotted down some notes before I hit record here, and what I decided is let's make a little web app, a form that is going to be used to allow people to sign up for a 5K run walk event. Okay. So what we're talking about is building something where people land on this site. They're going to decide, hey, I want to run this 5K. I'm going to do a couch to 5K program, let's say, and they're going to need to input some information so the race directors know to get them a spot in the race, get them a bib, order the t-shirt that comes with their registration, and all that sort of thing. So we're going to go ahead and build the basic framework to set up a registration system for a 5K. So in order to do that, we'll take a look here at the screen, and you're going to see that I have literally just a blank slate. And we're going to talk about some of the different elements that we have at our disposal right off the bat. So first thing I'm going to do is let's just put a very basic title on the top of this page, and I can spend hours talking about some of the amazing things that Bubble has done over the years to make these web apps so much more functional in terms of cross-platform, whether it's on a mobile device or on a full desktop. In terms of responsiveness, they've done some pretty amazing things that make your apps look seamless between web page on a large monitor like we're looking at today, or maybe on your phone. And that's not even getting into the new mobile iOS and Android native apps that they have now too. But anyways, let's just throw a title up here at the top of this page. Let's call this the 17th annual SolveOnyx 5K run walk. All right. This is going to be the title of our race. And we're just going to avoid getting into some of the responsive designs, and we're just going to build something like you would in like Microsoft Word or something. So we're just going to put a nice title up there. Maybe we want to show some color on this, and we're going to go with that. Okay, registration. These are the sorts of things that we need to capture from the people that are signing up for this event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of these input form tools down here at the bottom, and we are going to define what all is needed. So generally when you have an event like this, you definitely want to get the person's name. So we're going to put an input field over here, and similar to a lot of web app type stuff, there's what's called a placeholder. So we're going to just fill that in, and we're going to say enter name here. And we'll keep one record or one field for their full name. So first and last name. You could define the initial content you want in there. So if you want it pre-populated, you could do that. So we're going to say enter name here. And this will be a simple form. So you can get kind of carried away with entering like labels for different sorts of things. I believe that less is more. So traditionally, sometimes you might see something like first and last name, maybe with a colon or something like this. And you might see somebody build a form that looks like that, and maybe we justify it. And so, that displays beautifully. We can even put some padding in there on the right-hand side and bump that over just to put a little visual separation there. But to me, it's like, well, if you have a placeholder that says enter name here, do you really need that label? So I'd like to keep it simple, and I'm just going to say enter your name here, and maybe even take it a step further and say enter first and last name. like that. Okay, we got their name. Now, this is going to be something that the user is going to type in. The next thing I want to capture is, because of like awards and things like that, we want to have them select from a drop-down for their gender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a drop-down on this form, and I am going to change the placeholder to select your gender. And what I'm going to do, I'm just aligning these up here, and there's nice little snaps and things like that you can work with. Obviously, we got to pre-populate it, and we could just type in here male, female. We'll say other, cover all the other stuff out there. So male, female, and other. Now, that's one way to do it. When you ultimately write this data to the database or send it in an email, use it for printing awards or race rosters and things like that, that does work. But there's something that Bubble takes advantage of, that is super powerful when you have data like genders that aren't going to really change that often. So if you have data, for instance, maybe it's all the states of the United States, right? It could be, a pre-populated list. It could be different times of the day. For instance, if you have like a time selector, you can go over here to our data, and we'll dig into this more in a little bit. And I can use something called an option set. Now we're going to skip the tutorial. And the option set that we're going to build, and this is just something I started doing when I first started using Bubble, is I always preface my option sets with an OS, just so I can always keep track of what's an option set and what's data. So I'm going to call this OS gender, and I'm going to create this option set. And within this option set, I'm going to create three different options. I'm going to create male, I'm going to create female, and I'm going to create the other. So when I jump back over to the design of this form where I have my select your gender, instead of hard coding these choices, we're going to change this from static to dynamic. And then we're going to say the type of choices that the user is selecting here is an OS gender. Okay. And that means that this dropdown is going to show male or female when I render this page and we start using it. Now, it's defining what type of a value is going to be in this dropdown, but it needs to know, well, where are you getting those OS genders from? So what we're going to do here is we're going to click where it says choices source, and we're going to just simply select all OS gender. That means it's going to give you all of the options we've defined. If you wanted to, for instance, only use a couple of the options, let's say you wanted to only show male and female, I could go to all OS gender and I could use the filtered operation. And now I could add a constraint to that and say this OS gender is male or this OS gender is female. And now when I select that drop down from the app, when it's loaded, it will only show male or female. But we'll go back to the way I had it and just select all OS gender. And then the option caption, what this is saying is that how do you want it to display? Now with an option set, I can jump back over here to my data and I can assign what's called attributes to these different options. So let's say you were working in a situation where, yeah, officially it's called male, female, other, but what if I wanted to refer to that as something else? For instance, I could say, back up for a second, create a new attribute, and let's just call this alternate display. And that attribute is going to be of the data type text. And we're going to hit create. And now I can go in here and I can modify attributes for each one of these options. And I could say male. I want to call that, maybe it's, younger children. For instance, we could call that boy. Female, we could call girl. And then we'll say other over here. Save that. So then now when I go back to what I want my caption to be, what's shown in that dropdown, I go to current option, whatever the user selects, but then I got to specify one step further what display we want to use. We can use the default display value or this thing I called alternate display. So let's go ahead and just keep that as alternate display for now. And to show you what I mean, what I really like about this is I can test this app at any time by clicking this play button up here, and it's going to render the page in a way that, for instance, we can just go kind of side by side here. And so I can work my editor over here, and I can work the actual site over on the right-hand side. So you can test some of this stuff right out of the gate. So for instance, the name, in my case, I'm going to say Joe, and last name Schulfer. Now I'm on to select your gender, and I have nothing. I have boy, girl, and other. Boy, girl, and others, because I have it displaying that alternate display. If I jump back over here to this drop down in my editor, and I say, instead of that alternate display, give me the regular display over here on this page. One thing might drive you nuts over time, but it's just a reminder, you got to refresh this page because you literally just changed the underlying code for it. So if I go ahead and hit refresh, now my site, my app is updated. So when I select my gender, I have that male, female, and other option in there. Now you might be asking, why is there a blank? That would be if you wanted to give your users the ability to not provide an answer to that. And how you can remove it so it maybe looks a little cleaner so you don't see an empty space up there. Jump back over here to your editor. And this is going to be where you want to say this input should not be empty. So if we check that, go over here and refresh, now it's going to only give you those three options that we had defined. The other thing you can do too is if you want to help with making sure the form is completely filled out every time, I probably wouldn't recommend it for like a gender field, but maybe like a state or something like that. You can actually assign a default value, and this knows that this is an OS gender option set. So you can set your default as, let's say, male or female or other, because it knows what those options are. So let's just say male. And now if we go back over here, we can refresh it, and you're going to see that male shows up as the default value. Okay, enough on that. We're going to go ahead and clear the default value, refresh. And while that's happening, I'm going to look at the next item on my notes here. And one thing we want to do next is we're actually going to build another option set. And this option set is going to be something where you would provide like a range of ages. A lot of times with these 5K races, you have awards for like 19 years old and younger, 20 to 29, 30 to 39. You could do that too in a similar fashion. You could go over here into your option sets. We're going to create a new option set here, call it OS age range. We're going to create that, and we're just going to quickly create some options in here. I'm not going to do this whole thing. It might take us an hour. We don't want to spend that much time on it today. So we're just going to put in a couple in here, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69. And we'll go 70 to 79 and 80 to 89 and 90 to 99. Okay, so we got our age ranges in there. Similar, go back here. Let's go ahead and create another drop down. I like to do the copy and paste, especially if you have some formatting already set up and you want to duplicate that. There's a lot of things you can do with styling in here to make sure standards are met in all the different elements. But in this case, we're going to say age range, Now, there are some other clever ways you could do this too. We could also have the user enter their birth date, and you could do the math and figure out what range they fall into. But just for the sake of this being kind of an introductory demo to Bubble, I want to just keep it simple for the time being. So this is now, instead of an OS gender, this is going to be an OS age range. The choices is going to be all of our age ranges. And we're good with keeping the current options displayed. We want to make sure that's not empty. So we should have that one all built out, ready to go. So now we got our age ranges showing up. We have our genders showing up. We have our name. Let's talk about one that's pretty important these days, and that is going to be an email address. We want to email them a copy of their information, kind of a confirmation once they've signed up for the race. So let's go ahead and create another text box. And this one, we're going to say enter email address. And the content format here is going to be email. This is kind of nice because there's some things that you can do to check the data to make sure it conforms to whatever content you're specifying for this. And one of the built-in ones is email. So it's going to prevent you from proceeding. It's going to mark this as an invalid field in the case of a form if it doesn't meet the criteria for an email, whatever Bubble defines that is. I believe it's got to have the @ symbol and a dot, and separated, obviously. But those are the things it's going to be looking for to determine if it thinks it's a valid email address. So let's slide these up. We're not going to worry about how pretty this looks today, but we got enter our name, email address, and let's jump back over to here. So hello at, it's not a full email address. It puts the red box around it because it's not valid. But if I say hello at raceday.org, now it's going to take that red away because it's now valid. And all of that I just showed is all customizable. You can change that color. You could put a little pop-up that says enter a valid email address. There's so many different things you can do. Next, let's just put in a checkbox. And the reason why I'm putting in a checkbox down here is a lot of times you have to sign like a disclaimer, or you have to acknowledge some sort of a disclaimer. So what we're going to do here is, let's say the label is I agree to this disclaimer. Okay, so that's the checkbox. Let's just kind of park that right there. And in the disclaimer down here, we're just going to, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do this is probably a little beyond what I was planning to cover in this, but it's good. We want to add I'm going to show you how to do a pop-up. That's probably a little more than I was thinking we would do. But let's do that. Where are we at here? Pop-up. Okay. I'm going to create a pop-up right here. By default, it calls it pop-up A. We're going to call this pop-up disclaimer. And I need to add a text box to this pop-up. And in this text box, we are going to say, when you race, you may experience shortness of breath, and there are health concerns associated with that if you are unhealthy. That's all we're going to say. Okay. Obviously, you would customize that however you want. This is showing it really wide. I want to limit the width of this pop-up to I'm going to set it as a fixed width of, I like to use like 360. That mostly works on mobile devices pretty well. So we're just going to do that. Close that off. you're now starting to get the feel for this is more than just a website. This is like an actual app that you're building here. So we're going to include a button. We're going to center that button, and we're going to take this and we're going to kind of spread things out a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of, we're going to change the width of this because right now I want to make this fixed width, and I want to make it 75% of its parent container, which is the pop-up itself, and we're going to center that. And back over here to the button, we're going to say, okay. That's all we're going to do. We want that button to be a little wider, though. Like, it looks kind of weird. Let's make it like 180. That's too much, maybe 150. That looks more normal. By default, it puts some simple styling around there, rounded edges. Great. Looks good. So what happens to cause that pop-up? Well, nothing, because we haven't told it to trigger that pop-up. What we can do, though, is let's say if there's 100 different ways you could do this, but what we're going to do is we're just going to say parentheses, read disclaimer here, okay? And we're going to put that right next to that box. That text looks like it's 14 size font. This one is 16. We'll put them 14 so they look like they're meant to be. Now we're going to do something called create a workflow. It's the very first workflow we're going to create. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to take some action, make some things happen here on this app. So I want this to kind of stand out like it's clickable. One way to generally do that is you can underline things. That is kind of like the universal way to let people know that you can click on something. So we're going to hit read disclaimer here. And I'm going to go to this button. I'm going to add a workflow. And this is going to open up a new area of the app. There's kind of three main areas that you're always going to work on. You're going to work on the front end editor where we've been laying everything out. You got the back end, which is your data, your option sets. And then we also have the workflow tab right here, which is the second one down. And this is where you define different actions that are taken when you click things, click buttons, click links, whatever. So what we want to do here is when text read disclaimer here is clicked, we want to create an action, and we're going to do show an element. And the element we're going to show is I think it's this one, text when, no, that's not it. It's, what do we call it? Pop-up disclaimer. That's what we call it. So we're going to show the disclaimer. Public service announcement right now. Try to get into a good habit. And I'm kind of rushing through this quick because I wanted to cover a lot of ground here, but take the time to clearly define like what things are so that when you're referring to them in workflows and other things, you know what it is that you're referring to. So now I have a workflow set up so that when we click read disclaimer here, it's going to open up that pop-up, and we can quickly just check that by loading our site over here on the right-hand side. Read disclaimer here, and lo and behold, we have this nice little pop-up. I'll hit OK to close it, but it actually doesn't do anything, and that's because we haven't defined an action for that OK button. So if we jump back over to our editor, by default, it always turns off your pop-ups. I've worked in apps where I have 10 or 15 different pop-ups, and that's so you don't see them all stacked on top of each other when you're in your editor, drive you crazy trying to navigate through them all. Let's go ahead and turn that back on. We're going to go to the OK button. I'm going to add a workflow. And just like I did a show pop-up when you clicked the read disclaimer here, we're going to do hide an element. And we're going to say we want to hide the disclaimer. And now you got some nice functionality there that will hide it. So if I go refresh my app, and in the editor, I'm just going to hide that for now. So now when I hit read disclaimer here, I can read it. Okay. That all is acceptable to me. Now I can hit the checkbox. So we got the disclaimer, we got the name, email, age range. Okay. To keep it simple, let's go ahead and wrap this up. we're going to say register now for the form. And this is going to be a free race, no payment necessary. We could talk about that another day. So now we got our register now. Now this one's a little bit more involved. We're going to want to do a couple different things when the user clicks register now. One of the first things though that I would do is I would say that this button shouldn't be, you shouldn't be able to click it until certain criteria are met on your forms. And we can talk about how to define that. So let's say by default, this element isn't clickable. Okay. If you saw that, I clicked that checkbox right there. And that's, by default, it's not going to do anything when you click it. And based on the default styling that's set up, it shows it in a nice grayed out manner. And that's what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do over here on this register now button is I'm going to define some conditionals. And what we want to do is we're going to say when, and let's name these here really quick, just so we can keep track of everything. Let's call this one input name, and let's call this one input email. And let's call this one, I like to kind of refer to what they are. So we'll call it dropdown gender. And then we're going to call this one dropdown age. And we'll leave it checkbox. Let's call this check disclaimer. And that should be good for now. Back over to our register now button. What we want to do is we want to say, what we're going to do is we're going to define the conditions that allow that register now button to be activated, because by default it's not. It's set to be not clickable. So we want to light that up once certain conditions are met, starting with input name. We want input name isn't, where are we at here? Okay, I'm sorry. Input name's value is not empty. That's the first condition. So we want to make sure there's something in that field. And we want to say input email. And now this one, we defined it as an email field. So we want to say that input email is valid. That's what we're looking for there. And we want to say drop down gender value is not empty, meaning we want something in that field. And we want to say drop down age value is not empty. And lastly, we want check disclaimer to be checked. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conditions that need to be met. And once all of those are met, and these are ands, right? Everything's got to be met. Then we are going to say that this element, this is kind of weird, but we're going to say this element isn't clickable, but we're going to uncheck it. So that means it is clickable. Okay, little weird, but that's just how it's set up. So now if I jump back over here to my real-time viewer and make sure these conditions work, let's go ahead and see, obviously, register now. It's not lit up, even though I clicked the disclaimer. We're going to put in a name. We're going to put in email address. We're going to select a gender and my age range right there. As soon as I selected that last one, the button lit up, and now I can take action on that. But here's the thing. Even though it's clickable and you see when I hover over it, it changes color, it's not going to do anything because I haven't told it to do anything yet. So in this case, what I want to do when I hit register, I actually want it to do, ideally it does about 3 different things. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to do, we'll do 3 things. I think 3 or 4 things would be ideal. But let's just jump in and I'll kind of talk through what we want to do. First thing is I want to save this information to my database or the back end of this app we're building. And in order to do that, I need to jump back over here to the data, and we want to define a data type. And in this case, we're going to call it registration info. Okay, so, or actually, let's just call it registration. So this will be all of our registrations, and we're going to create this registration. And for those of you familiar with, databases, whether it's SQL, Microsoft Access, MySQL, works in a very similar way. You got your rows, you got your columns. So what we're going to do here is we're going to define registration as a data type. And now in here, we're going to create the different fields. And these fields are going to be basically your columns. And you always are going to see, looks like currently they have 4 default built-in fields, which at first you might say, oh, I don't really care who created it or when it was modified. You will. In the future, you will definitely find some of these built-in fields very valuable because it allows you to do things like, well, who created that record, or who created that entry, or when was it last modified? It will come in handy. For the sake of this, probably not, but we're going to go ahead and create some fields that correspond to our form. And to start with, we're going to call the first one name. Now, name is just going to be a text data type. It's a free-form field, so we're going to call it a text. It's not a list. We're not asking them to list everybody that's signing up, although we could. That would be beyond the scope of this intro, but you could definitely do that. So let's go ahead and create name. We want to create email. We want to keep track of everybody's email. Now, email isn't a data type. It's still considered text, so we're going to call it text. We're going to create a field for their gender. Now, it's defined as male, female, other, which is text. However, this is where some of the power of Bubble and using option sets really starts to shine. You now have your own custom data type, whether you realize it or not. We created one, and it's called gender. So I'm going to select OS gender as that field type because it knows it's going to be one of those 3 options that we defined. In a similar way, we want to set up our age, and that's going to be the OS age range. We're going to hit create. And last but not least, you could, in this case, create a field as to whether or not they selected the checkbox showing that they agreed to the disclaimer. But the way I look at it is, if they're going to submit the information, they had to have selected the disclaimer. So it really doesn't make sense to add another field to your database to keep track of that. So I'm not going to do that. So why did we do all this? Well, because when we come back to our editor and we hit register now and I edit this workflow, the first thing I want to do is take that information that the user entered and write it to my database. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go up to data, things, and I'm going to create a new thing. In this case, I'm going to create a new registration. First thing it wants to know is, what is it you're creating? Well, I'm creating a registration. And if I click this add all fields, I can either add fields individually, or I can just hit add all fields, which I usually click that just to make sure I don't miss anything. So what we want to do here, it looks like it's putting it in alphabetical order. That's fine. Let's go to age. And for this, it's giving you the options of the dropdowns that are in there. But that's not really what we want, because we want to read whatever the user input. In that case, that age was selected from dropdown age value. So now we're defining what the age field is going to be in the data. On the email, we're going to go, I think we called it input email. So we're going to set input email's value. On gender, we're going to do drop down gender's value. And you don't have to specify here whether it's the display or alternate display, because it just considers it like an entity. It knows what gender it is. You don't have to tell it which attribute it is. Same thing for name. We're going to do input name. Okay, name's value. Okay, so that's the first step. We wanted to save that data to the database. Next thing we want to do is I would create an email, and I could do the email to whatever email address they provided. So we want to send an email. Let's just jump down here first and say, thank you for signing up for the 5K. For the 5K. In the body of the email, we're going to say, we've received your registration info. I could even spell it out in the body of the email if I wanted to. We could say, you know, your name that you entered was insert a dynamic data. In this case, we could do what the input form shows, or in this case, we've already created the new registration. So I can actually reference that earlier step and say, result of step 1, create a new registration's name field, which is pretty slick, right? Then I could do email. Actually, let's not even do email. Let's just do, you know, gender. And we're going to go over here, insert dynamic data again. Result of step 1's creating a new registration, and we'll put gender in there. And this time you are going to want to specify because it's talking about what type of text you want to display. So we'll put in display. And so you could kind of spell out all that information so they can verify what they entered is correct. You can send it to, in this case, we want to send it to that same result of step 1. We want to send it to their email. And we're going to do a blind carbon copy. Let's just hard code this. Let's say I want to send it to the race admin or whatever. We could do that and type in the email address we want there. And there's some other options and whatnot, but you get the idea. So now it's going to also send an email. Ideally, if I had more time for this video, I would clear the form. I would probably put a splash pop-up that says, you know, your registration has been received. Thank you. Maybe another button that says register now. All different sorts of things. But before we wrap things up here, I'm going to just jump back over this, and I want to show you how filling out this form, how this works. So I'm going to hit Joe for my name, J. Schulfer at SolveOnyx.com, and gender, age range. I agree. Register now. Notice this little status bar up there. It was doing something. I would have to define and develop this out further to like clear the form and show a pop-up like I was saying. But it did run everything that we defined here in the workflow. And the way we know that is we can jump over to our data now. And this is where we defined the different types of data. But I can actually look at my app data now and see all my entries in that data type. And here you can see I have one entry, age 40 to 49, my email, gender, name, when it was created, when it was modified, so on and so forth. So that was pretty good. I don't know where we're at in terms of time, but we went from a basic overview of what this system does to a fully functioning form. So that about does it for today. I wanted to just provide a very high-level overview about what Bubble is capable of doing. We literally, I wouldn't even say we scratched the surface. This was just like talking about some of the very basic fundamentals of what Bubble can do. You can do about 1,000 times more than what I've showed today. But getting back to why we're talking about this sort of thing, using these tools allows you to build some amazing web applications, because gone are the days where you have to build applications and then deploy them in your organization, outside your organization, on specific workstations. These are web apps that anybody with a modern browser, Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, whatever, is going to be able to load this. You're not going to have to worry about installing, uninstalling, all that sort of thing. It's just going to work, and you're going to be able to make changes to it on the fly, push updates, and not have to worry about that sort of thing. Extremely powerful stuff to allow you, as maybe the owner of a small business, to get up and running with something that would otherwise cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and months of development time. So until next time, I'm Joe with SolveOnyx. Thanks for tuning in. Look forward to hearing your comments. Be sure to do all that stuff, like, subscribe, and all that. I'll be rolling out new videos every week going forward. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.